Welcome everybody to Blerdlines. It's your man Cam. With me, as always, is
the great Manchester United lover that is Josh. Don't laugh.
We always have
We're
sports
back.
references. It's hilarious.
We are back.
Long suffering, and now you are back. And we are back talking about the surprise hits of the summer of the winter. Of the February, of the can.
I was about to say, did I miss the snow outside?
Oh no, I know. I'm just future projecting. I'm trying to get to summer as fast as possible. Yes. So we're here talking about Wonder Man. Surprisingly, it has been getting rave reviews across the board, from the critics to the fans, to some of the nerds, to some of the cinephiles. It's super interesting that the amount of praise it's getting, but also not surprising, because there are elements in it, to me, first, that I thought that the things that people are starting to bring up are really, really dope. But there's other quibbles that we might have. And I always say quibbles because I'm like, I don't want to go full negative, but we got some quibbles. But before we get into all of that, like, subscribe, share, follow. Early.
Turn on your notifications. But yes,
turn on your notifications. My last one. Thank you. But yeah, so we have Wonder Man. It's the last of, I think it's officially the last of whatever phase that we were in, phase 5 or whatever, to be pulled off or whatever from Marvel. It's the latest, and it's the latest and possibly last TV show for a little while. It was completed, or it started during the writer's strike.
Daredevil Born Again in March.
Oh yeah. That was okay. So, but it was completed like during / right after the writers strike, and so that was back in 2023. That's when they started doing filming and everything else. Writers strike kind of delayed it, and then they kind of delayed it from getting into the schedule. So it almost got pushed out like another year, almost 2, honestly, because I think it was supposed to officially drop in like 2024, 2025. So here we are at 2026, and the fanfare is interesting because the rollout of the marketing was very low comparable to other things, and it was to the point where it was noticeably no.
Yes, and yet another Black-led Disney series that got the short shrift on the marketing side. Worth noting.
Yes.
Disney, Marvel.
And that's and it's a pattern now. We've now seen the pattern, right?
I mean,
2 is coincidence, 3 is a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, with all that, we had a couple random trailers that dropped. We didn't really know what we were looking at, and then they had an interesting rollout in terms of the marketing, aka no rollout. And so from a social standpoint, Black social was kind of like, yo, once again, Marvel's shitting on us. They don't give us money to promote the shows, blah, 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 blah. Starting to feel like Riri and Ironheart. It's a whole other show and a whole other situation. But now, fast forward, we dropped in January 2026, and it is getting overwhelmingly positive reviews, like overwhelming, to the point of I'm actually shocked. Josh and I watched it because D's not going to watch it, and Cam's like, eh. So we are, as the resident Marvel heads, we'll watch them all. But with all that, me talking, Josh, what was your initial impressions of it when you first started watching it?
So in keeping with our usual, we're going to start with the positives. And then we'll get to the quibbles afterward, like you said.
Yep.
I thought it was, first of all, I'm a huge Yahya Abdul-Mateen second fan. Like, the man's just, he brings light to even to roles that you don't think are going to be all that interesting. And he carries the whole thing, really. He really pulls you into his character. He pulls you into the plight of his character. He pulls you into the psyche of his character really, 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 really well. That said, he just in keeping with the plight of his character, this idea of following a struggling actor who's been trying to get on and not supported by his family, and being Caribbean, when you're in entertainment and media, I know that one really well. So so I can relate to that. Shout out to the Haitian diaspora who got a little significant representation. I was not expecting his family to be Haitian, so huge clap there. And very authentic seeming Haitian family, as far as I know. So the portrayals, Trevor Slattery, Ben Kingsley, Sir Ben Kingsley, let me give the man his proper respect, was more than just comic relief, which was nice to see. They gave him something to sort of sink his teeth into a bit here for once, instead of just being the slapsticky, goofy comic relief that he's been in the last, at this point, 2-3 appearances that he's made. Which oddly, dipping back to Iron Man 3, he was probably the one interesting thing about Iron Man 3 that I could walk away with, because I did not enjoy that movie at all. I agree. Yeah, that said, he really sank his teeth into the character of Trevor Slattery and gave you a little bit more than just the comedic slapsticky, goofiness, which, to be fair, is not something I expected from Ben Kingsley to be able to pull off as well as he has, as consistently as he has. Again, this is just adding to the legend that is Ben Kingsley. The man can do anything as an actor. But yeah, he, it was lighthearted at times. It was fun. It was poignant where it needed to be. Again, it did what it seemed as though it accomplished the thing that it set out to do.
Yeah. And I think the most interesting part was, it looked good. That was one thing. It definitely looked good. Cinematography and that kind of thing. It looked good. Acting and casting wise, great. Sir Ben definitely helped Yahya and elevated what he was already kind of doing. And it was a good balance of that, right? I think that they were I'll say a positive and a negative, where to me, this felt like almost like a Heroes type of episode. Not Heroes, the later seasons. I'm talking about season 1. And I say that in respect that they're doing a show that is about like superheroes and that kind of thing, but in a way that's not like superheroes capes and tights. So the element of the superhero is in through the whole show, but it's not front and center. And Heroes season 1 did that a pretty good job of that. After that, everything, I'm not talking about anything else. But that was the vibe that I was getting as I was watching. It was like, oh, there's a superhero thread in back of this, but it wasn't the main thing. And, a lot of the reviews, they kind of compared it more to like a WandaVision, where it was kind of taking a different take of your typical suit and capes type thing, which I thought they did, that's true. And I thought like it was an interesting way to kind of go about it. And I am so glad it was 30 minutes. Man, I don't know if this would have worked at an hour. Like just 44 minutes. There's no possible way. I'm trying to stay positive. I'll go to my negatives later, but I'm making it 25 whatever minutes.
It was 30 minutes.
Yeah, because that kept it in a space where it kept the ball moving, right? I think and that helped the pacing of the show. Again, going back to like the production value of everything was just done really well. Like it looked like it was shot well, and even from the writing, which I was surprised that they did a really good job of rehabilitating Sir Ben's character, because the character still sucks, but Ben's amazing, and he made it actually worth it watching. And again, it's Sir Ben Kingsley, man. You legit. Even when he was it's like the slapstick in Shang-Chi, it was annoying, but he's still good. And I think that's the thing that as you watch this, it's the same thing. We're like, oh, okay, maybe this character is not as bad as I thought, but it's also more, no, it's Sir Ben that's like pulling that out. And I thought Yahya did a good job of kind of embodying the type of character that we have for Simon Williams. I am curious. This made me more curious of what they want to do with them, because it's a pretty open and blank slate. And I think it shows that, one, he finally found something that he really liked. And for him, I think this is a kind of a get back from being Aquaman, which was kind of, where it's, horrible writing and just being silly, but he got that check. Where like Dr. Manhattan was like, oh, okay, he got to really sink his teeth into it. And I feel like this is the one where he really did that, where you could tell he's like, oh no, I really care about making this as best as I can. and showing the complexities of the character. And also, but I think going back to more on the positive side, what they've kind of put together here felt like something that could have been done maybe 5 to 6 years ago in that sequence, and I think it would have got received even more on a larger scale. Like I think it kind of, after I watched it and kind of like sat back a little bit and thought about it more, I'm like, oh man, if this would have been slotted in a couple shows ago, I think it would have kind of helped balance out a lot of the dumbness that Marvel was kind of taking out at that time.
Another thought that came to me as a positive is Hollywood was used expertly as a background or a backdrop for all of this. I would even go so far as to say it felt like a character in the show, in the way that Miami felt like a character in Miami Vice, in Michael Mann's Miami Vice film. Like it had a presence in the show itself, in every episode where he's auditioning and he's, pretty much when he's in the movie theater, any instance where he is engaging media or entertainment felt like he was in Hollywood.
Yeah, definitely. And shit. And yeah, I think that's one of those things where it, again, going from the positive, it definitely made Hollywood a good supporting character to the overall show. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I was more curious about, there's parts of it where I'm like, okay, where are you guys going with this? And then I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting. But I think at the same time, I think even when the way it wrapped up, they pretty much did tell a nice, complete story from beginning, middle to end, which again, I think that was actually a good thing too, as opposed to trying to, give this like hint, nudge, like, teaser to something else. I think they actually just kind of told a complete story. The director is Destin Daniel Cretton, he did Shang-Chi, and he's also hired to do the new Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is going to be very interesting because like this showed a little bit more nuance to what his type of output was, as opposed to what Shang-Chi was, where Shang-Chi, you got a little bit that maybe like in the first act, but then 2 and 3 just kind of went to the typical Marvel formula, where this one you saw, okay, this is your style. Okay, this is your nuance. You're trying to go a little bit more. Okay, I can see what you were trying to do, so that now you can kind of go on to Spider-Man and maybe have an interesting approach. So I think now I have a little bit more curiosity about Spider-Man. I mean, I already did. I'm going to watch no matter what. But like now I'm like, oh, okay, if this is what you can do on a smaller scale and you got to tell a story that you wanted to tell, I think this is pretty interesting. Now I'm curious to see what you're going to do with Spider-Man. And
definitely
the other aspect of it. Yeah. And so, we all hate Rotten Tomatoes, but it's one of those things. But it's doing well from the critics and the fans, which is a very interesting aspect of it, because a lot of TV shows it's usually one or the other, and it's a very rare for Marvel, where like now this is actually, I think this is the best rated Marvel show, I think, out of all of on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that, which is wild,
without even looking. Without even looking at it.
And I'll put it, because the Marvel shows as a whole aren't quote unquote good. And this is a shout out to D'Angelo, because he always talks about this. The bar gets set down low. So now that we set the bar back down to just the Marvel type shows, I would put this in the top like 3 of the Marvel shows, like in terms of like, like telling a complete story, satisfying ending, how it was made and put together. Like it was done pretty well. And I think, I'm not the biggest fan of WandaVision, but I know that it was a well-made show in terms of like what they did. But I think the most interesting parts is this came at the end of the time where almost people didn't care anymore.
What are your other top two Marvel TV shows?
I would put it at, for me, I liked Hawkeye a lot. That's probably the only show out of all of them that I actually rewatch, but that's more because of the characters. The characters were really fun. The overall plot and everything else was like pretty straightforward, nothing crazy, but the characters made the show so much more fun. Haley Stanfield was amazing. Florence Pugh was always fun. And it actually made Grumpy Cat Renner actually like have more fun, because he was around people that were having fun as well.
What was the other one?
And then other one, I personally like Falcon and Winter Soldier, because that's just my thing.
Yeah,
but in terms of,
I don't have a problem.
Yeah,
with
Yeah, but with like as of saying like of good in terms of like what was made, I think WandaVision is probably in there as well, like in the top 3 in that respect. And I would put Falcon and Winter Soldier for me personally probably like 4 or something. Now I would put Wonder Man at 3 or something like that. But a lot of the shows and there's a bunch of shows, and that's another thing. There's a bunch of shows I didn't watch. I didn't watch Moon Knight. I didn't watch Agatha. I didn't watch.
Okay.
I didn't watch Werewolf by Night. I didn't watch Echo.
I didn't watch that either. Echo is good.
I will, and I actually will go back and watch. To be honest, I'm gonna go back and watch Echo and Moon Knight because I think now this. Yeah, and this is my other positive. My other positive is this makes me curious about the other Marvel shows that took a different approach
that you didn't see. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay,
that's how I look at it.
I would say Echo is an honorable mention, 4th place for me. Definitely Falcon and Winter Soldier. Definitely Hawkeye. And I guess, this would be my 3. If out of the top 3, I would say this is my 3 with Echo as an honorable 4th. Shout out to the Native American squad. But yeah, no, Echo was solid. It's a good character dissection. It's not perfect. It does skirt around a couple things and sell a couple of things short, but the actress who played Echo blew it out of the water. And they definitely they paid a great deal of respect to Native American culture as it exists modern day in the US. They have festivals, they have powwows, they have the whole bit. And they're not done like, sort of lightly or as a pandering kind of thing or a backdrop to. It's part of the story. It's part of her story, integrally. And so, yeah. So in that way, it's not just, random Native American does random thing and, oh yeah, let's give her a headdress and some face paint. Like it's not disrespectful at all.
And I would say, and also we want to point out that we're not counting Daredevil in this group. We're talking about Disney Plus pre-Netflixy type. Like Daredevil kind of came in after, but
did I say that? Did I say that with a lot of disdain in my voice? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Daredevil is on his own. Daredevil is a Netflix. I still put Daredevil with the Netflix group and keep that, even though now it's on Disney, but I don't connect.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Just because it's just a totally it's just completely different. Like, and also it's not even fair because that's easier. But with that respect, I think that's the thing where, now that we've gotten to most of the positives, the one thing I would say about the shows that we did like were those ones, right? They were all character driven. They had some type of a lightheartedness, but also seriousness. And there was a good balance of that. So it was basically like watching a good comic book, essentially. And I think that with Wonder Man, that was the thing I got at the end where I was like, okay, I'm not super into this, but I see what they're doing. And I was like, oh, this is dope. At least they've done it. It was done well. Everyone, and again, my thing, I like when I can tell the actors actually enjoy being there as opposed to just don't want to be there. And I think that's the part that helped. It helped along a lot. And yeah, so those are my positives. Did a pretty good job. I'm very proud of myself. Now let's get to the negatives.
So bad.
All right, so negatives. My first negative is like this could have easily been called like black actor guy got powers, and that's it. Like Wonder Man
didn't have to have Wonder Marvel. Man, like you didn't have to have Marvel attached to it. Okay.
Nope. It could have been a spinoff. It could have been an American spinoff of Supercell or something like that. Because I think the one part I will say about the other shows is it had a tinge of Marvel, right? So even with Hawkeye, it's Hawkeye going through his whole thing. And of course, there's a couple of, actual suits and action and all that. But like a good sense of it was in the Marvel universe, where like this one didn't feel like it was set in the Marvel universe. It just happened to be in Hollywood. People have powers, and that's it. We had a whole episode of an F tier character, Doorman. Shout out to Great Lakes Avengers. If you know, you know. Yeah.
I don't believe that you worked in. I don't believe that you worked in a Great Lakes Avengers nod.
Yo,
this has been years in the making for you. This has been years in the making for you. You've been waiting and plotting so that you can do this. I hate you.
But they did a whole episode on Doorman, who's literally an F tier character in all of Marvel. Great Lake Avengers shout out. And like, again, not saying it was a bad episode. It was actually pretty heartwarming. It was heart tragic and it was done well. Josh Gad was having the time of his life for some reason. That guy still is weird to me. I don't know how he's famous. But again, it was just like cool, but what? And also like the other negative is like, without having no shield, we have damage control, which is another waste because it's like we've wasted shield and damage control. And I think shield got wasted because we already know what we can go into long. We might have to go do a retrospective of shield one day, just me and Josh, because that's a whole other pet peeve of ours. But with damage control, same thing. They basically made damage control look like the CIA bumbling guys, not like an actual thing. Like, what is their actual mission? Why are they there? All this type of a thing. They kind of just looked like shield light. So I was just kind of like, you didn't even really need to have them. And they didn't, and there was just no antagonist. His antagonist of the show was his self-doubt and like quasi-depression. And like, there was no real like quote unquote antagonist. Yeah, and his struggle. That was the antagonist. And so if that was the case, cool. But like, you don't need a Marvel tag on this. You could have literally like tagged it. They kind of do like a Marvel Spotlight tag on front of it, which is weird. I gotta look.
Which is hilarious because this was a Marvel Spotlight show.
Yeah. And so I'm like, so from a comics standpoint, I'm just like, okay, we didn't need this, and it could have just saw Wonder Woman in a random thing in Avengers and be like, oh, who's that cool black guy? And then we find out, oh, he has powers. It's Ion. He's an actor. He did da 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 blah 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 blah. Give us 10 seconds of a flashback or some montage, and then keep it moving. So while watching it was like, oh, cool. But I'm like, we didn't need any. It almost felt like a I don't want to say it, but Loki season 2, where you're like, oh, this is cool. But if you didn't watch it, that does nothing for you. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't help you for anything you've watched prior or after.
Yeah.
Got it off my chest. Feel better now. But also, I think also too, and like shout out to D'Angelo as well, where he brings this up a lot, where it's like, there's a lot of things where you're like, why are these things happening, right? And besides money and everything else, Joey Pants, that was actually a really good cameo, and payoff too, super fun. That was great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like we basically got a nice another like Hollywood insider type of show, kind of like The Studio, which is actually really good on Apple. Seth Rogen, shout out to that dude. Like, it's a dope show. So we got that kind of a thing within Marvel, but then I didn't feel like this added to the Marvel's world building. It just like, it didn't even feel like a slice. It just kind of felt like a nice little drop story, one off. And then that's about it. Like, I didn't need it to connect to anything or anything like that. But who else is in LA that's a Marvel person that would be in it, that would make sense to connect it in a way that is not overly thing, right?
The West Coast Avengers.
That's a whole nother rant I can go on too. But that was my thing. So I was kind of like, as I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, this is cool. I'm glad we made it. This is fun. I'm glad that people are involved or making it. I'm glad the crew made it. And the story they told was like a nice, complete story. But I'm like, it didn't feel like it was anything else. Like, we didn't need this. And I think that was, and it's a little too late. And where people have a superhero fatigue, those types of things. And if this came out maybe 5-6 years ago, nestled in between everything else, I think it actually would have been even better, because you've been like, oh, this is a cool little slice outside of the norm, But because it's at the tail end after so many just like lowering the bar type things, like, we had a year where Thunderbolts was arguably one of the best Marvel movies in 5 years, which is not great to say, but true. Like, it's not bad, but it's like, if that's what the best is, then we have fallen so far down. So that was my thing. I was just like, one, and then I'm reading a lot more of the positive reviews, and the majority of them kind of just say that they're like, oh, this was a cool thing, but it's a little too late at this point, right? Why do we need this? And I think that would be my thing too, where if you guys are telling me this is like quote unquote prestige Marvel, and like a lot of creators are kind of going a little bit too far with that, and they're just going way like, yo, cinematography and the colors and the palettes and I was like, whoa, like, come down, guys. This is Disney plus Marvel. Like, it's done well, but it's not on that level of type of stuff. Like let's dial it back a little bit. But yeah, so I'm very interested in that respect, in that discourse now, where I'm glad it's getting the hype of it because Yaya deserves it and Serbin is Serbin. But I'm also kind of like from a grander scale, if I'm a Marvel fan and I'm watching this more, just like how is this fitting in? Or if Wonder Man was my favorite character, I would be like, wait, what? Besides seeing those couple things on screen, oh, here's the costume, here's kind of his powers, but not really. And then we got 2 seconds of his actual power, and then that was kind of like, eh. So that was the thing I was kind of like struggling more with, just like, I see what you guys did, what you made was cool, but I don't see how is this going to fit? How is this fitting? And also how did we really need it? And I think that's going back to D'Angelo, who's making me more cynical these days, is it's like, did we need this? Did we need this? No. Was it enjoyable? Yes. I think that's where I pretty much land on.
I realized something while watching this, and the realization that I've come to is Marvel is way overthinking these TV shows. All of them. Even the ones that I like, they're overthinking the premise of these shows. And by that, I mean, using Wonder Man as an example, piggybacking off the last thing that you said just now, was you barely get to see him active as a powered individual. You get one scene where there are a bunch of guys in an alley that try to run up on him, and he loses it. Not he loses it, but he's defending himself, and Ben Kingsley tosses a bunch of guys around. So clearly he's strong. And that brings us to the next problem. They never clearly define what he's able to do with the powers that he's trying to hide from Hollywood and from his agents and from damage control and all these things. And that's just kind of silly, which dovetails into my next issue. Something that you mentioned. Damage control is not S.H.I.E.L.D. It's never going to be S.H.I.E.L.D. It can never be a proxy for S.H.I.E.L.D. You screwed up when you booted S.H.I.E.L.D. out of the MCU, and now you're trying to compensate for that by making damage control the MCU. I mean, the MCU's S.H.I.E.L.D. They are not. Stop it.
And quick note, Damage Control was co-created by Dwayne McDuffie. Also, shout out to that man. All right, R.I.P. One of our faves. Yes.
And if I remember correctly, Damage Control is local to New York, is it not? In the comics?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're not like some company that FBI. Yeah. So they're not like adjacent to the FBI or some national organization. They're not. It's not necessary. Like I said, you're just overthinking all of these things that do not need all of this added weight to them. Like, it's a TV show about Wonder Man. Wonder Man is both actor and superhero. The worlds conflict in the books. The world's kind of like Yahya Abdul-Mateen did not need to read a single Avengers or Wonder Man comic book to do this role at all.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yep.
Because it's so far afield. And I think that brings me to my next thing. This show in particular is so far afield of what the character is as he exists in the Marvel universe. And again, I'm not, I think it's worth saying, it doesn't mean that the show has to mirror the comic books exactly, because none of the movies and the TV shows have. So that's fine.
Yeah.
But make it at least remotely related to the character and what the character does and how they do what they do, or they exist in the larger Marvel universe. At least a little. This has nothing to do with anything in the MCU or the books. And aside from the black guy with powers. Aside from the fact that damage control is now, for reasons we never really get, policing whether or not powered individuals are participating in things like films, which is just, I mean, no, we do get an explanation with that with Doorman. Fine. But
Great Lake Avengers.
I'm so mad that you were able to squeeze that in. Y'all don't understand how often Cam brings up the Great Lakes Avengers in like daily conversation, but he's avoided doing this on the pod. And this man, I thought he was never going to do it, and now it's clear he's been plotting and waiting all this time to be able to bring up the Great Lakes Avengers.
It's relevant. Shout out to John Byrne who created them. It's
for sure. Shout out to OG John Byrne. But you've been waiting for this forever, jerk.
I blame the creators for using Doorman. That is hilarious.
Yeah, I guess I have to blame them too if you're going to bring them up. That said, it's I feel like they're overthinking these things. They don't need to it doesn't need to be this far afield in this avant-garde thing that's that far away from the source material. I feel like it's funny that DC is getting closer to the source material, whereas they were the furthest away from it. And now Marvel is falling further and further away from the source material, the further in that they go, in a bad way. And that's not to say that the show was bad. This was a good show. It isn't like Cam said, it could have just been black guy with powers and call it a day.
Yep.
Marvel spotlighted, you could make him loosely Wonder Man and it would have been fine. But he exists in the MCU. And how? Why? Why? And I don't mean that sarcastically or sardonically, but why is he here? Why has he been inserted into the discourse? What purpose does the character serve? Where is he? There was no, at the end of it, we'll see Wonder Man again in Marvel, in Avengers Doomsday or anything after that. He's just kind of there. And if he's just going to just be there, then what did we go through all of this? What did we go through 6 hours of this for?
Yep.
And again, I'm ecstatic that Yahya Abdul-Mateen is getting, A, has work, and B, was able to put in a great performance as Simon Williams. Is not to take none of this. I need to stress this, is to take away from a really good performance by him, very against type for the characters that he's played in the past, and very relatable, very real character, all of those things. This is all not to take away from that. However, I don't think if you're going to make a Simon Williams TV show, you gotta give him, if he's going to be a hero or a powered individual, you gotta give him something to do and something to be against. And it wasn't any of those things. It was, and I don't mean to minimize character studies, but it was just a character study. And I
think that's the problem. And I think that's the overall problem. It was a good character study, but then that's going what you said. It was just a character study. It wasn't a character study set within Marvel Universe, or it wasn't a character. It literally was random black guy with powers is an actor and he's struggling and he's hanging out with this British dude. It didn't really have any element where I was like, oh, this makes sense in terms of the world building, or it was adding to anything. It was just kind of there. And you're just like, oh, all right, cool. But am I ever going to see him Wonder Man out and use all his powers and have, white pupils or something like that, or just purple ones, or what are we doing?
Or turn purple with the Jack Kirby energy bubbles around him.
Oh, yes, that would have been awesome. Yeah. But you're right. If I'm, I don't really care about Wonder Man as a character either or, but then this didn't really help that either. If I watched this, I didn't ooh, what's Wonder Man? I was more just oh, that's Wonder Man. Cool. And that's about it. And I think that I'm more curious. I felt like you got a little bit more of a solid origin story of why and who from the F tier Doorman episode than you did for Doorman than you did for actual Wonder Man. And I think that's the problem, where it's I know way more about Doorman and his backstory than I know about Wonder Man, besides him possibly killing his dad breaking a bunch of stuff and then really hiding it all the time.
which brings up the next issue. How the hell did he get his powers?
Ding, ding, ding. They don't say it. It's a mystery. It's a mystery.
Like, come on, man. Mystery. Like, you gotta if you're gonna give him a backstory, like, make that, I would say, probably the best version of that of telling that sort of a story, where, you know, they'd sort of dip into his backstory and sort of give you little bits and pieces, is Daredevil. The first season of Daredevil on Netflix. Like, they sprinkled in his history with his dad and how his dad would throw fights to pay the rent and all this other junk. And then the accident with the chemical and all of that stuff. Like, that to me would have been a better addition. Not to say that the backstory with his dad and how his dad used to take him to the movies and that's how he got into acting and what inspired him to be who he is now and yada, yada, yada. All of that was great. Except the added addition of, okay, also this kid, like, was he born with powers? Is he a mutant? Like, give me some kind of something that tells me how this all started, not the movie career, but his power, in addition to the movie, or let me not say not in the movie career, in addition to his movie career, what inspired it, but also how the devil, this little boy, came about having the powers that he has.
And I think that was the problem. Like, you just like, what are we doing? Like, it's cool that they, like, going back to what we said, it's a cool character study, but a character study of who, a why, and that's about it. So, well, now we've already ranted too long, as we always do, and we've already put it where, you know, ranking wise, where we thought about it for. I am curious to see what Marvel's going to do now. I think we're in this weird. 2026 is going to be super interesting because we got Spider-Man, we got Avengers, and then we have Daredevil. Those are the only three properties they've kind of announced as coming out this year, which is great that they've dialed down in terms of like output, but it's also not, because Doomsday looks like a hot mess. And so
does it? You think so?
Hot mess in respect, I would say, I think they're in a very interesting space where I really hope Stark as Doom is a MacGuffin and it's not a thing within the whole thing. It's a thing. It's going to be a thing, but I hope they do something around it so it's more than just the thing. Because, right, since they've been rudderless for the last two phases, they really do need the reset where they can kind of set a course somewhere. And which makes it worse is DC shows now how you can do that after a bunch of mess. Where Marvel went the opposite way. They're like, hey man, we're building to something. And then now Marvel's like, I don't know what we're going to do. And where DC was like, we're all over the place. And now they're like, nope, we're going right over here.
Straight line.
Step. Yep. Ooh. So I'm now that the tables have turned, I'm curious to see in the comics, it's starting to happen now too, where it's been I think Chip Zdarsky and Hickman are going to be taking the reins of Marvel Comics as a whole and saying, Hercules, this is the North Star. Everyone can do whatever you want as long as you are pointing to the North Star. And I think that's something.
And I think that's a huge, the fact that it's Zdarsky and Jonathan Hickman, I gotta say, that's a good.
It's a very good thing. It's a very good thing. There hasn't been.
I may start. I'll announce it here first. I may start collecting again if that's the case.
Well, and honestly, this hasn't happened since Bendis about 10 years ago. In terms of,
I will go further back than that. I will go back to as far back as OG Secret Wars, where there was no coalescing of, like, that was part of. I mean, yes, it was to sell toys, like it was a blatant cash grab, but also had a good story. And one of the things that came out of the wash with Secret Wars is now, whereas before Secret Wars, the characters really didn't interact. Like, they would show up in Marvel team ups, or, you know, somebody would get permission to use a character in another book here and there. What came out of that was Spider-Man and the FF now have a relationship where Spidey has a science problem that he can't figure out on his own and seeks out Reed Richards, or him and Johnny Storm now are buddies. That wasn't a thing before. You know,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
Psyche and Captain America now have sort of an on again, off again bromance kind of thing. But and that led to them not really being boys and sort of clashing in terms of Cap's sort of blind spot and ignorance where mutants are concerned.
Yeah.
There's a lot that came out of original Secret Wars that I don't think people really pay attention to because it was so long ago and it became the norm.
Yeah.
After Secret Wars.
Yeah, definitely. And I think now, it's interesting because the old X-Men 97 did a really good job of this within it, where showing the vastness of the world that the X-Men lived in, right? When they broke into something and then boom, like Captain America shows up, or you see someone's flag going past is flying in the air, and you see Daredevil looking up, they're like, oh, what's that? That kind of a thing. And I think those little touches could have added into Wonder Man, helping it fit better into the actual world. And and again, it's very subtle, but it worked. And one of the things that the Netflix shows did well, various levels of good in that as well. But, Jessica Jones walking into a bar that Luke Cage is bartending at, and they're having a conversation. Him being in it for a episode or 2 episodes and then going off, whatever. But still, it showed that the world is a little bit bigger. Where Wonder Man, we don't need Stark to pop up. We don't need Nick Fury to pop up. But we could have had a Coulson. We could have had another character that wasn't super powered or anything crazy, but is in this world and lives it, and it would add into it. And I think right now, I'm curious to see how Doomsday is going to work out. More just because it's literally looking like a Marvel event in comics, and those things could either go really, really good or really, really bad. And I think that DC is doing this right now with DCKO, where DCKO is straight up hilarious cash grab. It's literally a meme. It's who would win between Superman and Captain Atom? Who would win between Harley Quinn and Black Canary,
or whatever,
or something like that. But they're taking it with that level of silliness, and that's why it's working, because everyone's in on it, right? It's not, the premise is pretty but it's just fun to put these things together, and they're rolling with it. And props to DC, they're making it work. Where on the Marvel side, when they've been doing a lot of their events, a lot of it's just kind of doing stuff just to move a character from here to here, and then that's about it. But no real world consequences. Or they're taking characters that were already getting built up to be something else, and then all of a sudden making a hard left turn just so it fits into their idea. And I'm looking at you, freaking Vampire, the Marvel Vampire event, which was horrible. But Blade was the big bad for that. And up until that time, for about 2 to 3 years, they had integrated Blade into Avengers. They gave him his own team for a hot second, fighting vampires and monsters. They put him in the Vampire Nation, as he was the cop in the Vampire Nation, working with Dracula and the whole nine. He has a daughter. His daughter got trained by Dracula. Like, all these things are doing the interesting things for a Blade. And then all of a sudden he's the bad guy in a big Marvel event. And then they haven't talked about him since. So it's just like, what are we doing? And I think that's my main thing for Marvel. Like, maybe Doomsday is going to help me and be like, hey guys, this is what we're doing. This is what our North Star is. The comics seem like they're starting to figure out what they want to do. Maybe the movies will do the same, but right now DC on comics level, TV level, and movie level has finally found their footing, and a sea where everyone's like, oh, superhero comics are boring, blah, blah, blah. And James Gunn's like, no, they just been told in the way that you guys are starting to get tired of. Now we're trying to do something different, where Marvel's kind of like, hey guys, we're still here. You guys still like us, right?
Well, and I think part of the issue with Marvel is they don't have a central figure like a Zdarsky or a Hickman who is saying, we're going that way, and just pointing in a direction, and like, everybody, like, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. And the individual writers get to tell the story of how we get there. And I think Marvel
that's the thing they're bringing back.
Right. Marvel Studios was supposed to have that. Marvel Studios, whether it was Whedon, who wound up crashing out, or James Gunn, who wound up crashing out. Well, not crashing out. He left. But he got crashed out, then came back, and then left on his own terms. But Gunn was supposed to be the guy. They don't have a guy now. I think people are under the impression that homie who runs Marvel Studio, like he's the executive producer. He's the guy who runs things, but he's not, you know, he's not a James Gunn. He's not a guy who is this is the North Star kind of a deal. I think he is in the grand scheme. Let me not undersell him. But I feel like there's no storyteller who's at the center of all of this going, all right, I'm going to pull from this. I'm going to pull from this. I'm going to tell that director to include that element and this thing at the end of the film to sort of point in that direction or do this or do that. Like, no, there's nothing that is a guiding. There's no guardrail, no real guardrail in terms of the storytelling. And I feel like you can see that when you watch the last, 3 phases, probably.
Yeah, I would say that since basically Endgame, essentially. Yeah, since once after Endgame, and I think and I have to actually go watch or listen to this podcast with Chip Zdarsky, who's a really dope writer, did an amazing run on Daredevil and a bunch of other stuff. But he basically was like talking to a writer who's about to write another book. I forgot which book it was, but he was like, "Hey man, I'm about to write X. Is there anything I need to read before I write it?" And then Zdarsky was like, "Actually, no." And he was like, "And that's the problem. So we need to fix that." So yeah. I think if they can figure out that problem too, because even when the short time when I was at Marvel, they had those writer retreats all the time. Once every 3 quarters, they would get all the writers that do X-Men. You guys are all in a room. Hey, what's your ideas for the next year? This, and that. Oh, can't do that because this character's going to be over here. This character, and they worked that out, and they did that with each pocket of the of the Marvel comics, and then they had an overall plan. But nowadays, they just haven't done that, or they gotten away from it. Part of it is money, part of it is just whatever. But I hope that Marvel can get to that way as well on the movie end as they're starting to do it in the comics end. Because right now, we're going to be living in the era of Gunn for a while in terms of anything superhero related. And then, so I'm really curious to see if Marvel can kind of get recapture a lot of that. And honestly, it only takes like 1 movie and 1 TV show. Maybe this Wonder Man is the TV show. Maybe Spider-Man is the movie going into Avengers Doomsday. But I think we have to just figure out, they got to figure it out because, there's a willing populace that grew up with a lot of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And now you have those fans. You have us, the old schools that have been reading comics since we were little. You got the new kids that only came up within the last MCU, which is almost like 20 years now? Almost now? 25?
2008. So yeah, we're looking at 20 years.
Almost 20 years, right? So yeah, you have a whole generation of kids. Yeah, a whole generation of Marvel fans that only know Marvel from the cartoons and the TV show, cartoon TV shows and movies. So you're in a very space where you have the audience. Now, what are you going to do with us? So we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. Again, I've come this far.
I mean, yeah.
I've come this far. I gave up on X-Men for 10 years, and then Hickman came around and with his Krakoa era, and it got me back into X-Men again. And then it ended, and then now it's a mess. But still, I'm here for the ups and downs. Also, we will in 2026. We're gonna do more some more comic book content, just because we are big comic book nerds. I still read comic books pretty regularly. And there's a lot of good stuff out there, especially on the indie front, especially on the Black authors and Black creators front. Mm-hmm. So we really want to highlight some of them because they're doing some amazing work, some super interesting things. And then in the big 3, they're doing some good stuff too here and there. So, but yes.
You got me thinking, when did I bail on comics? Onslaught. Yeah. I bailed at the end of Onslaught.
Yikes. That's a good one to bail on. I mean, there's been better stuff since, but
yeah. And I came back, literally a friend of mine, a coworker of mine, he made me read Civil War. He literally slapped the trade paperback on my desk. I was like, nah, I'm cool. Yep. I'm done. And after about 2 or 3 months, he basically he took his trade paperback and left it on my desk with a post-it that said, "God damn it, read this."
There you go. And honestly, that's a good one to get back into. But so we'll definitely cut back on some comic, and we'll pull in some of our other comic nerds that are deep into it like us, so we can have a good conversation. Mm-hmm. But that's what we got for Wonder Man. You know what? I gave a lot more positive than I thought. I'm very proud of myself.
I'd say so.
But once again, like, subscribe, follow, tell a friend, check the notifications. And this is Blerdlines. We out.
Peace.